Good afternoon and welcome to the Boston Public Library Fund's webinar, Creating a Lasting Legacy. My name is Priscilla Douglas, and I'm chair of Boston Public Library's Board of Trustees. And when I introduce myself, people often say, I love the library. I'm also a proud member of the Boston Public Library Fund, and that is our leading philanthropic organization. And that's in that capacity, I'm welcoming you here today. I join you from the historic McKim building in Copley Square. I'm here often, and I love the grandeur, and I love the fact that so many of you and visitors from around the world enjoy the Palace for the People. It never ceases to impress. As many of you likely know, the Boston Public Library's Fund is the primary philanthropic partner of the Boston Public Library. The fund works with individuals, corporations, and foundations to grow private support for the library. Since its start in 2019, it has expanded programs and services way beyond what public funding alone can provide, so that everyone, and I mean everyone, can learn new things, explore their passions, and advance their lives. The library, if you're like me, and I'm certain that you are, a lover of the library, it probably began very early. I can tell you that when I grew up in Bedford, Massachusetts, the youngest of 6 kids, the only girl, every week my mom would take me to the Bedford Public Library. And I had a plan. My plan would be to start at one end of the shelf and read my way across to the end of the shelf. I didn't have any genres. I really loved everything. And I remember our town librarian, Mrs. Dowling. Later on, I read my way out of Bedford and eventually to Harvard. And at Widener, while working on my thesis, I tried to do the same thing. I'd go to Widener and I'd start at one end and read to the other. Needless to say, if you've ever been in the stacks at Widener Library, you know it isn't possible to read every single book. But I'll tell you what, all I can think about when I think about the library is that it's a place that inspires us. It lifts us up. We develop empathy through the stories that we read. And we go places, not only in our imagination, but in the possibilities that it expands for all of us. So I love the library, and I welcome you here today in that capacity. I hope that when I see you, that I'll hear your story. But I'm excited about our conversation today because the resources of the fund are being utilized real time to not only extend library programs, but to create new ones, innovative offerings, reaching new audiences and new communities. My experience have created a legacy of memories, and I believe in giving back. And that's why I have already committed through my philanthropic efforts to join the 1848 Society. And you'll hear more about that, and I invite you to join me. Making wise financial decisions for ourselves and for our loved ones requires us to stay informed. And free webinars like this are empowering. And I am so pleased that you're joining us today. The presentation is going to start in a minute, but first, some housekeeping. We are in a webinar format, which means your microphone is muted and your video is off. This event is being recorded, but you can type questions into the Q&A. You see the Q&A, those two bubbles at the bottom of your screen, not the chat box. Using the button with the conversation, use the button with the conversation. At about 12:30, we'll jump to questions that were submitted when you registered, and then we'll get to your questions submitted here. Keep your questions general. This isn't an opportunity to get personal advice if you are in this process of thinking about your plans. And now, I'm pleased to introduce Eckert Byrne. Eckert Byrne is a trust estate attorney and wealth advisor with over 25 years of experience at Eckert Byrne LLC. She is passionate about helping clients create estate plans that encompass more than just a transfer of tangible assets. Eckert Byrne is a life and legacy planning law firm and is also the author of 2 books, A Widow's Guide to Help Women Who Have Lost a Spouse Through Their First Year, and her second book, The Inheritor's Guide, a legal, financial, and emotional guide for adult children managing their parents' legacy. I'm delighted that she's here with us today to share her knowledge and expertise in this free webinar. Welcome, Anna. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. It's such a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. And I love the Boston Library as well. So thank you for all you do. So I'm going to share my screen to begin the presentation. All right. So creating a lasting legacy. I am a big fan of libraries. My mother was a librarian, and as a family, we love books. As a little girl, just like you, Priscilla, I coveted my library card because I would go to the library every Friday after school and take out books that would take my imagination on many adventures. Just a quick note that the information I'm going to share today is general information, and I urge you to work with your personal attorneys for specific recommendations on creating a legacy. Before we discuss how to create a legacy, I first want to explore why we should create a legacy. For most people, their children and grandchildren are their primary legacy. They want to leave what's left of their money and things to the next generation. A financial legacy to the next generation is the hand that helps lift and provides a financial safety net. The thinking goes that they will remember me for leaving them something. But this is just a starting point. Today, we'll explore several considerations when designing your legacy. As individuals, we are shaped by our efforts and experiences. Our life experiences become the basis of our legacy. For many of us, our greatest lifetime impact will be our work and our family. This slide shows a tree with little acorns. Each acorn represents different components of our lives. Our family, our friends, our careers, our accomplishments, our values and beliefs. You may want to examine all the components of your life that have created a lasting impact. Listing all your impactful experiences will be helpful as you begin to articulate your legacy. Our lives are finite, but our impact does not have to be. Legacy is more than just your name being remembered. From hospital wings to museum exhibits, people tend to want their name to be out there. But this is not the only way to be remembered. We each have the opportunity to impact the world long after we're gone and create a shared legacy out of what we've learned and earned throughout our lives. You should not leave your legacy to chance, but rather embrace this opportunity to design the legacy you want to leave while you are still alive. Just like an oak tree, we have many experiences or points of impact. I consider those your little acorns. Spread the wealth of your time and money and affect the changes you want to see. Create opportunities for others and make the most of your own life experience. While you're alive, all the causes and endeavors you care about can be supported through giving or volunteer opportunities. Just like the oak tree passes its legacy through its acorns, you can do the same through your deliberate efforts and actions. Think of what you care about. Is it the environment, literacy, dogs, cats, preserving heirloom seeds, or trees? I'm a fan of trees. Whatever it is, identify it. Your legacy is however you define it. Legacy includes intangible things like values that you leave to your heirs, your family story, how I came to America, how I became a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, how past generations dealt with challenges, how we as a family support charities. These are very powerful stories that can impact how the next generation is inspired and deals with setbacks. Legacy can also include philanthropy. Just like the graphic in this slide, legacy is like an acorn that can establish different outcomes or saplings on the slide, like educational opportunities for those in need, opportunities for youth to access sports and other activities, supporting environmental causes, creating or maintaining cultural centers for your community like art museums and libraries, and the list goes on. It's really up to you to reflect on what holds the most meaning to you. One powerful example I wanted to share is Andrew Carnegie's legacy of creating libraries across the country. At the height of his wealth in 1901, Carnegie's net worth was the equivalent of 2% of the American gross domestic product. Today, his wealth would be worth the equivalent of $309 billion. Massively wealthy, he donated 90% of his wealth to charities, foundations, and universities. He wrote a very famous essay about wealth that's a very good read. In it, he espouses the idea that it is the responsibility of each person with wealth to design and create a charitable legacy. He acknowledges that wealth is unequally spread among people in a capitalist society. But the compensation for such inequities come through the creation of a legacy which spreads wealth for the betterment of all. His famous quote, "The man that dies thus rich dies disgraced," speaks to his convictions. One of the outcomes of Carnegie's charitable giving was the creation of 1,679 libraries across the country. This was at a time where knowledge was contained in books that only the wealthy had access to. Consider how many lives these libraries impacted by providing all people with free access to knowledge. What an incredible legacy. The generosity of one man has rippled through generations, and we still remember the benefit from his impact over 100 years later, with over 800 libraries still in operation and 31 of them in Massachusetts alone. While most of us won't be donating tens of millions of dollars, contributing any amount to a cause you care about is a contribution to your legacy. This is not an all or nothing conversation. Doing something is better than doing nothing. $1 donated is $1 more than the recipient had before, and the impact it can have for individuals and communities can be exponential. At the Boston Public Library, individual donors who are proactive about their legacy have contributed to the BPL Fund by supporting many of the library's programs. As Priscilla described, there are many, many opportunities that exist beyond just books at the Boston Public Library. You can borrow a book, of course, you can get your homework done with free Wi-Fi, you can take an English as a second language class, get your taxes done, take a creative writing class, and meet up with like-minded people, all for free due to donor support. The final reason you should consider creating a charitable legacy is pragmatic. In addition to the benefits of your broader legacy and the community you leave behind, charitable giving can also benefit your loved ones. Devoting some of your estate to qualified charitable beneficiaries can relieve the tax burden on your estate. Most charitable bequests reduce the amount of estate taxes that are paid when a person dies. So now that you might be inspired to create a legacy, let's look at how to do so. Where do you begin? To create a legacy, the first step is to create an estate plan that ensures your wishes are clearly articulated. 67% of Americans die without a will. So if you don't have one, you have company. An estate plan encompasses your family and charitable legacy. By creating an estate plan, you make it easier for those handling your estate to effectuate your desired legacy. Your legacy can be mired if you don't create a plan by creating unnecessary stress for heirs, inviting conflict, and result in unexpected taxes. Create a will or revocable trust to outline your wishes to ensure that they are carried out after you are gone. It's your legacy, so it's up to you to create it. In considering leaving a charitable bequest, first you need to ensure that the organization you support is a qualified charity. The IRS has rules about this and has a helpful database on their website where you can confirm that the organization you want to support is a qualified charity so that you can benefit from tax deductions for such donations. Before I discuss how to create a legacy after you die, I wanted to provide you with some options to start defining your legacy while you are still alive. There are several lifetime giving options. First, you can make a direct gift to the charity of your choice. You can write a check or transfer stock to the charity. You can make a gift to your donor advised fund. For those of you not familiar with donor advised funds, known as DAFs, a DAF is an account that you establish while you are alive, which then allows you to direct charitable gifts during your life. The advantage of a DAF is that the amount of the contribution to the account is the tax-deductible gift, and the subsequent gifts to charities from the DAF do not have to be tracked for tax deduction purposes. You can use the DAF funds quickly or over many years. Finally, if you are receiving required minimum distributions or RMDs from your IRA account, you can direct your RMDs to a qualified charity through a qualified charitable distribution known as a QCD. There is an annual limit on the total QCD contribution that can be made, and for 2024, the maximum is $105,000. Although the QCD does not qualify for an income tax deduction, the QCD amount is not subject to income tax. The direct gifts to a charity or DAF will allow you to take a charitable income tax deduction if you itemize your income tax deductions. So now let's look at the various ways that you can leave a legacy to charities when you die. Most people leave charitable bequests in their wills or trusts. Legacy gifts completed after death through wills and trusts can be drafted in a few different ways. When you create your estate plan, you will have to decide whether to use a will or a revocable trust. In these documents, you will have to outline how to leave assets for your heirs and how to include charities. There are a few options to consider. You can leave a particular account or property as a specific bequest. These types of bequests get paid out first, so it's important to consider what might happen to your legacy if that account or property is sold, since the bequest would lapse if the account or property is not a part of your estate when you die. The next option is to specify how your estate will be divided between your heirs and or charities as a percentage. Using percentages ensures that each of the listed heirs or charities will receive something, even if the estate is worth less in the future. The final option is to designate a specific pecuniary amount to a charity. You outline how much you want to go to the charity, and that amount is the sum that the charity will receive. When making a specific pecuniary bequest, note that this sum gets paid out first so that you have certainty that the amount you want will be earmarked for the charity, but it might also mean that this bequest leaves less for the remaining beneficiaries. The final consideration when leaving a gift to a charity is to consider the purpose of a gift. Do you prefer to have the charity decide how to use your gift, or do you prefer to leave the gift for a specific purpose? We work with many clients who are interested in endowing scholarships in a particular university or department, and some who trust the charity to allocate the bequests as they see fit. It's totally up to you to decide how to define your gift in your documents. You can also designate charities as beneficiaries under retirement accounts, annuity accounts, and life insurance policies. Legacy gifts through beneficiary designations on these accounts are a great option. Generally, these assets, these retirement accounts, annuities, and life insurance policies do not pass through a will or a trust. Instead, you are required to designate beneficiaries for these types of accounts. IRAs are unique. IRA rules require that most non-spousal beneficiaries have to withdraw the IRA balance within 10 years after the death of the original owner. And such distributions are subject to income taxes. Charities named as beneficiaries under a retirement account do not have to pay income taxes on such distributions, so the full value of the gift is available for the charity. How do you name a charity? You will have to update your beneficiary designation with your account custodian to list the charity. Naming charities in your retirement, annuity, or life insurance policies allows you to update these beneficiaries without updating your estate plan. Many of our clients appreciate the flexibility and appreciate the tax efficiency in making bequests from their retirement accounts. So we've looked at why you should create a legacy, and we looked at how you can create a legacy. So now it's time for you to consider the ways you want to make an impact. Consider all the little acorns you want to plant and take the initiative to maximize your legacy's potential. Which acorns do you want to take root? What springs to mind first? Consider the things you've learned and come to appreciate over the course of your life. Consider what your unique life experiences have led you to value. Consider what experiences and opportunities you are thankful to have had. Then consider what you can do to perpetuate those values, experiences, and opportunities for future generations. This can be a fun exercise and may also create lifetime opportunities to give back before you die. Start small and take small steps. Some people find this to be overwhelming, and small steps really make the most sense. But because you are here today, the Boston Public Library Fund may be the perfect starting point. When contemplating a charitable legacy, consider the BPL Fund. Leaving a legacy gift to the BPL Fund would allow you to positively impact the greater Boston community in a myriad of ways. Your gift would allow the Boston Public Library to continue to serve the Boston community in remarkable ways. I was amazed to learn all the things that the BPL does beyond just serving as a library of books. The BPL offers a safe place for youth to study and learn, a free place for community to gather, offers classes on a variety of topics for many different audiences and age groups. It also offers access to technology like computers and printers. The BPL reaches all generations and communities in Boston. I hope you consider giving to the Boston Public Library Fund. It was a pleasure to be with you and hope you learned a little bit more about how to create a lasting legacy. And I'm delighted to be able to answer some additional questions for you. I think Priscilla is going to be joining us.
Hi there, Anna. That was terrific, comprehensive and clear. And I really appreciated, I'm sure others do, your metaphor of the acorns and taking root, dropping and taking root. I have a few questions that were submitted in advance of this webinar. And the first one is, what should I look for when hiring someone to help me with my will?
That's a great question, Priscilla. So I would say that the main consideration in considering who you hire to work with you to create an estate plan is to look for someone whose main focus area is estate planning. Attorneys, just like many other professions, have become highly specialized. And finding an attorney whose focus is solely on estate planning is probably the best bet, because they will be able to understand the various nuances and the various ways to create an estate plan that encompasses all of the things that you would like to include.
Thank you. Great advice. Look for somebody who's had previous experience, and that is that particular expertise.
Exactly. And there's one additional subset that maybe is worth mentioning. So estate planners, even estate planning tends to even become hyper specialized. And even as estate planners, we have our own niches. But there's a subset of estate planning that's called elder law planning. And elder law attorneys also are able to draft wills and create trusts. And their main focus is not solely focusing on taxes, but their focus is on helping the senior population understand what benefits they might qualify for in the community as they age.
Oh, that's very helpful distinction. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next question is, how do I know if a living trust or a will is best for me?
Another popular question that we get all the time. So, what is a will and what is a trust? So, a will is a document that is drafted during your lifetime. And in it, you designate who you want to be in charge of administering your estate, known as the personal representative. The personal representative is the person who steps into the role of ensuring that your assets are distributed according to what the will says. The second component and major component of a will is outlining how you want your assets divided when you die. And the will has to be signed according to the formalities. It requires 2 impartial witnesses, which don't include any people that you've named in the will. And typically we like to have our wills notarized. So that will just is in effect collecting dust and kind of giving you some security knowing that you have a will. And it matures like a fine wine and a good cheese when a person dies, right? So when a person dies, that will is not the document that you take to the bank or to the financial institution. The will has to go through a process called probate, which is a court-driven process whereby the person named in the will as the personal representative is appointed, and the court simply oversees the process of ensuring that the personal representative is doing all of the things that they're supposed to do, including providing notice to all of the heirs and all of the individuals and charities named in the will. So a will requires the court to administer it in order to ensure that all of those wishes are carried out. In a revocable trust is a document that is created during a person's lifetime. A living trust is typically a revocable document. So that means that over time, even though you create a revocable trust, you can change that trust over time. You could amend it. You could even revoke it if you decided that it didn't have any purpose any longer. And a revocable trust, the moment it's signed, right? So in a revocable trust, similar to a will, you are articulating who is going to be in charge of the trust assets when you die. And that person is known as a trustee. So while you're alive and well, you are serving as the trustee. When you die, there's this kind of change of control, right? If you're gone, the trustee is who steps into your shoes. The trust also articulates who do you want, who are you designating these trust assets for when you die? And the trustee's job is to oversee that those assets are distributed out to those individuals or charities named. A trust can avoid the probate process, and that's why a lot of people decide to create a revocable living trust. In order to avoid probate, however, it's just not a magic wand. You don't just create a revocable trust and assume that it's going to avoid probate. In order to avoid probate, a trust has to own those assets that you want the trustee later to oversee. So when creating a revocable trust, you really need to ensure that your assets are aligned with the trust by transferring ownership of certain accounts. Not all accounts get to be put into the trust. For example, retirement accounts, we don't ever put into a trust, but bank accounts, investment accounts, real estate, those are the types of assets that can go into a revocable trust. And assuming that you create a revocable trust, you retitle those assets in the name of the trust. When you die, the trust passes outside of probate, and the trustee oversees the administration and the distribution of assets outside of that court process. So it can be a very efficient way of managing an estate when you want to maintain privacy and not having all of this kind of pass through the court public process.
So how often do you update, or should you update, if there's like family squabbles or disagreements or something going on in the family?
That's a really very important question. And I think most people assume that once they create an estate plan, whether it's a will or a trust, they're good, right? It's good for the next 25, 30, 40 years. But that's simply not true, because a lot of things will change during your lifetime. The people in your life will change, your assets will change, what you care about will change, and laws will change. And so you really need to look at your will or trust on a regular basis. I do recommend once a year, because we have clients that come back after 2 years and it's like they need to change many, many things. So I think it's a worthwhile exercise to pull out those documents and look at them. Just look to see who you've selected. Are those people still in your life? You know, what charities have you selected? Are those still charities that you care about? Are there other people that you would like to include? So absolutely important for your estate planning documents to be reviewed on an annual basis.
Oh, it's really a dynamic process, taking a look at your relationships and staying in conversation with people. Thank you so much for that. We have a question. Do you have thoughts on charitable gift annuities?
So charitable gift annuities are really a subset of the QCDs that I mentioned in my presentation, and they're limited in terms of how much. So what is a charitable gift annuity? So a charitable gift annuity is a gift that you give to a charity. And part of this agreement with the charity is that you receive an income stream for the rest of your life from this gift. So I think a lot of people, when they make gifts, they're concerned about making gifts because what if I need that money? You can't get that money back. With one of these qualified charitable annuities, you get to receive an income stream that's taxable to you. It's limited to $50,000. So it's not, it's a one-time $50,000 gift that you can give. So for certain people, that is definitely a serious consideration if income during your lifetime is an important component.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a question. Actually, a couple of people asked this question, and it is, I know fees may vary, but what is the cost to pay an estate attorney?
Yeah, I think it varies greatly depending on what a person's situation is. So it's possible to get a will and kind of your basic estate planning documents done for, I don't know, even $1,000 or even less. But if you're thinking about considering taxes and the impact of taxes on your estate and have more assets that have complexity and you want to create a revocable trust, $10,000 may be a very reasonable fee to pay, given the savings that you and your family would have from creating such a plan. So it varies, and I would really suggest that you, when you interview the estate planning attorney that you're considering, that you ask and are very upfront about fees. How will you charge me for this? Is this a flat fee? Is this an hourly engagement, right? Traditionally, lawyers bill for their time on an hourly basis because we don't sell products, we just sell our time. So it's important for you to ask, how will this attorney charge for your time, for the will or the trust or the product that you will receive. I tend to prefer flat fees because you have some predictability around what those costs would be, and you're less inhibited from asking questions, and you're less inhibited about sharing information that you might worry if you have an hourly engagement. Maybe I'm not going to share this because this is going to cost more. So I think it's a really important question to consider and ask and be very upfront about it, and know that there are many attorneys out there, and chances are you can find one who could fit your price range and fit the type of engagement that works best for you.
And now you can do a lot of this work online. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that these forms need to be notarized, and that there is an expertise around this field. Are there any pitfalls to doing it online?
I think that, it's wonderful that there are online services, and I fully support and, hope that they work. The problem with them is that you don't know what you don't know. And I think the value of working with an attorney is that they know the questions to ask. And if they understand your family situation, they can really help guide you around making the right decisions for you. So I think it's probably fine to create simple documents, but I've seen situations where people come to me with certain documents and they say, oh, this is the trust I created. And, I have to be the bearer of news at times, bearer of bad news, to let them know that what they created really is not going to work for them in the way that they had thought. So you have to be very careful. It's buyer beware. And maybe over time with, I don't know, AI may take my job away. But I think that there is enough complexity in how things work, between taxes, between understanding how certain assets work, and really explaining, to someone, the pros and cons of doing one thing over another. That's what you're paying for when you're engaging an attorney. So I think it's worth the money, knowing that you have the right documents, and that the documents say the things that you want them to say, so that you really can have peace of mind.
Yeah. I like that, the whole idea of having, being in a conversation and with the outcome, talking about things that are oftentimes difficult to talk about, and be guided through that conversation so that you do indeed have peace of mind. I have a question that you talked about earlier, but an individual wants a little more clarification, and it is, what is the difference between a revocable and an irrevocable trust? Is there a minimum asset amount? So you talked about this a little bit, but could you please repeat some of that?
Sure. So a revocable trust is typically used in estate planning to create kind of this foundation estate plan of designating how you want your assets to pass when you die. And you, in a revocable trust, retain the ability to modify that trust and change that trust during the course of your life. An irrevocable trust is irrevocable, which means you can't change it during your lifetime. And it serves sometimes very a very different purpose. When we create irrevocable trusts, we are trying to move assets out of someone's estate while they are alive for some purpose. So most of the time, clients want to reduce the value of their estate for estate tax purposes by making gifts out of their estate. And so when we make gifts out of their estate, when those are not direct gifts to family members or charities, we are creating irrevocable trusts to achieve that purpose. So when creating irrevocable trusts, you have to be very careful because you are surrendering ownership, you're surrendering control. You cannot be the trustee generally of the irrevocable trust that you create. So it's a big step, and it is really an irrevocable trust is serving to move assets out of your estate for either estate tax planning purposes or asset protection purposes.
That's really clear. It's just kind of like the ultimate downsizing, right? You're moving things from one area to another. Here's a question. For a widow, do you take on clients to serve as a personal representative when a family member is not appropriate?
So in my firm, we do take on that role on a very limited basis. We're a small firm, so I can't serve that role for everybody, but we do have clients where we discuss, here are all of the different, they tell me these are all of my people, or I don't have people, who can we have? And so we will take on the role of serving as that personal representative to ensure that assets are distributed according to the wishes outlined in the will. And other attorneys do as well. So I'm not alone in doing that. And some attorneys maybe even focus on that more than in my firm.
Right. Yes. Thank you. This is the last question. And the question is, I work in HR. What tools and resources could I access to help our employees?
Generally, or
I guess, kind of preparing people to either have conversations about estate planning or wills, or thinking about what they might want to do regarding philanthropy.
So I believe that there are a variety of websites that offer general guidance around how things work. My books are a good start.
Yes, I was going to mention that.
Not to be too selfish in plugging those. I think that there's a good website, and I think that there was a quote that was floated in the beginning before the presentation. There's an organization called Wealth Council that has a website, I think it's called estateplanning.com. And on that website, there are a lot of resources to help people understand the basics of estate planning. There is another organization that I met the CEO a few years ago. It's a Boston-based organization. It's called Join Cake.
What is it?
Join Cake.
Yes.
CAKE.
Yes.
And it's an interesting organization because, and I really fully support what they do, because there is such stigma around death and dying. And I can't tell you how many people who have come into my office are nervous. They liken this experience to getting a root canal. And, it's not scary, right? This is your life. We are not going to get out of here alive. We have not yet found the fountain that's going to keep us alive for all eternity. Our lives are finite, and what Cake does is they have a lot of tools that allow people to articulate their end of life. And doing it in a way that is less scary, more approachable. It's very reasonably priced. So that might be a really good organization to connect with and see what resources they might offer.
That's a really a good way to close this conversation, because it is creating that legacy beyond you. Our lives are finite, but our contribution and our ability to make a difference in the future is not. It lives on. I'd like to thank you for this inspiring and informative conversation on behalf of the Boston Public Library Fund. Anna, you've been terrific sharing your knowledge. And I know I learned some new things. I have some new tips, and I will not forget those little acorns. And I want to thank all of you for joining this conversation. And as a follow-up, I want you to know that the fund will recorded this webinar, and we're going to send you a link to the webinar for your reference, so that you can follow up and learn more about what the library has regarding planning your gift. This webinar it's only one of hundreds of programs that the library offers. And so I invite you, we invite you, the fund invites you to take advantage of all of these free programs. Come back to the library, visit us, come and see the Sargent murals on the 3rd floor. Come and see those lions welcome you at the McKim building. This is an exciting place. We know you love the library, and so we want you to be here in the Copley branch or any one of our 25 branches and enjoy. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Anna. Thank you to the fund, and thank you to all of you. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you, Priscilla.